My name is Sam Briegel. I am originally from Knoxville, Tennessee. However, you will not detect a Southern accent. I have lost it. um, I currently live um, outside of Baltimore, Maryland. So from Knoxville, I ended up going to the University of Tennessee in Knoxville, where I was like interested in going to art school, but wasn't really sure what to do with that. I took a pottery class and that was it. Like it hit all the marks. It was like, 3D. I could paint on it, I could draw on it. It was functional. That was really important to me. And then I met some of the grad students there and realized that you could go to graduate school for ceramics, mostly Hannah. So graduated, in 2013 with a BFA in three-dimensional arts with a concentration in ceramics. Then I moved all the way to Helena, Montana to be an intern at the Archie Bray Foundation, specifically in their clay business. So I did a lot of research and development for them, mostly updating the records of their clay bodies. So learned a ton. For those of you who don't know what the Archie Bray Foundation for Ceramic Arts is, it's this nationally recognized ceramic art center. So essentially I got to meet all of my favorite artists, and it was kind of like Disney World for ceramics for me. And I got to take classes from the residents, and I learned a whole bunch. That was a very formative experience for me. I still use some of their techniques that I learned in my own work now. So I love Montana. I wanted to stay in Montana. So I applied for a postbac at the University of Montana in Missoula. So a postbac is kind of like doing a residency at a university, and you have access to the faculty. And so my favorite patter of the time, and also still, is Julia Galloway, and I got to work with her as a postbac there. And then I used that year, while I had access to faculty, to develop a body of work and to apply to graduate schools. I ended up getting into a few, and I ultimately chose Ohio University. They have a really great program. It's funded. I was excited to move a little closer to Knoxville, where my family was. So I did 3 years there and graduated in 2018 with my master's in ceramics. I'm pretty fresh out of graduate school. I feel like I'm still sort of finding my way as an artist out in the real world. And then directly after that, I moved to Washington, D.C. to do a residency, which was new at the time, at a place called District Play Center. So I helped them kind of form their residency while also being a resident. I would have never guessed I would have moved to a city or to DC, but that was sort of, my only kind of option at the time. And it was really great. I still have a really great connection with that center. And after that, I was a resident at Baltimore Clayworks. Also great to get to know a new community. It was close to DC, so I still had that connection there. Continued to make work and sort of refine the process that I've been working with. And so that kind of brings me to COVID. And when that hit in the spring, I was teaching at MICA, the Maryland Institute College of Art. I was teaching 2 beginning pottery classes. And so, in March, when everything went online, I was, having to do the online teaching for pottery. And some of my students were, had moved back to China, and it was kind of insane. What that also meant is I lost access to my studio at Baltimore Clayworks. So it forced me to kind of move my studio home and invest in some larger equipment. So I set up a studio in my boyfriend's basement and bought a small kiln, and have been working there ever since. And I'll also point out that I was working up to some major opportunities. I was going to have work at NCECA, so our ceramic conference. which was in March. That was canceled. And then I was also had been juried into the Smithsonian Craft Show. And so that was going to be in April. So some big months were coming up, and everything kind of stopped, and I was actually really happy because I could like take a break and have a rest. I didn't go very far. I just looked down and saw what I was wearing and went from there. No, it's a little more like that, but I think I was always drawn to the vessel as a comparison for the body. And I personally, my work is very autobiographical. And I've always sort of struggled with, body image and like feeling good and confident in my body. And so I always felt that clothes played a major role in that. I was always making connections that were pretty like especially before graduate school, I always was drawn to pattern and how it could maybe like hide things. If you wear like horizontal stripes, that'll make you look larger, or vertical makes you taller. So I was always interested in pattern as a way to hide form. So in graduate school, it occurred to me that I needed to be a little bit more direct in my references. And so I had this section in my wardrobe, and I called them goal clothes. So like the clothes that I would buy and maybe I'll lose 10 pounds and wear it one day, which wasn't really the case. And I found that to be very toxic to my like self-esteem. And so what I did was I cut it apart, and the first thing I did was a slip casted picture. And so it was like this denim like picture that I slip casted with the texture by like using some like felts, like moldable felts and stuff to cast. I eventually decided I did not enjoy the slip casting process because the end result was one that was fixed and I couldn't change it after all the steps. So what I did was I flattened those. So from textures in my wardrobe, I also have a couple in my catalog of textures that are from friends of mine or people who have like donated a piece. And I'm specifically looking for clothes that have contributed negatively to their self-esteem or body consciousness. And so through the work, I hope to reclaim the identity of that and to offer a more celebratory object that is nourishing and comfortable. And so that transformation is one that I continue to work with in my work now. So all the textures have a story behind them. Like maybe I wore like a dress to my brother's wedding and I can't stand to look at the photographs. My weight has sort of always yo-yoed, and there are certain times in which I've felt more confident than others, and there's a lot of power in how I feel about myself now because I've been able to sort of still enjoy the textures and patterns, but they're on other objects, and I get to share them with others through pottery. So I'm always interested in that connection. So that's what inspires me is my own insecurities. I gave a workshop in December through frankarts.com where I went through the process of casting a slab and making a mug. I don't really keep it a secret. It is a very complicated process. And so I kind of just say, well, good luck. It's just going to take a couple times to try to get it right. I start with clothes, typically textured. There are some limitations, like I can't do like super thick, chunky patterns. They need to be like a low relief texture. I use this craft foam that's like, it's like thin sheets of foam, and some of and you find it in like the kids section of the craft stores. I expose the stickiness and I stick the fabric on top so it's flattened. I pick a really flat surface and I sort of double stick tape that to the to the table. And then I set up cottle boards around that. So that's so that I can pour plaster in on top of the fabric and it won't spill out. And so I cast, an inch of plaster on top of the, let's say it's lace, peel off the layer of lace, and I have this really nice reverse image or recess of the lace texture. When that dries, then I can start to cast slabs. So all of my work is, well, not all of it. It's a combination of slab building and throwing, but most of it is slab. Any of the texture is going to be from a sheet of porcelain, which I really enjoy the reference to, a sheet of fabric. So I think essentially I'm creating, slabs of fabric from the texture of actual fabric. And then the colors are from using mason stain in my porcelain slip and painting that in the recess and sponging it away. And so building up colors that way, kind of like the intaglio process of printmaking. So like layering colors. Then I'll pour like liquid slip on top of that, and then I'll put a rolled out slab on top of that, wait like 10 to 15 minutes, and then pull it off. And so I have, layers of slip. I do have a background in sewing. I've sewed ever since I was younger. I got a sewing machine when I was 9. And also I'm 4'11", and so I learned how to hem my pants and make my own clothes. And so I guess that's another part of inspiration that I left out, is that I'm also like a amateur seamstress. I found it very hard to find clothes that fit me, and so I had to kind of alter them to fit. So my brain kind of works in the 2-dimensional pattern to 3-dimensional, and so I form pattern templates where I can cut them out of the slabs and then build them into the objects that I make. I also kind of feel like I'm on an episode of Project Runway in the studio, where you get the reference where I'm like, oh, unconventional challenge, I'm gonna, make porcelain garments. So it's a lot of fun, and it's fun to come up with new patterns. There are periods of time in my studio where I'm just designing things and sort of like exploring and fabricating. Recently added in, bisque molds and other objects that I can build onto. And then occasionally I will throw components to then slab build around, because it's really hard to slab build onto, like, in the air without any structure. So the jars that I make, I throw the gallery and the lid, and then slab build around that. The teapots are the same. I throw certain parts, like the top, but slab build the rest. So I think I'm a process junkie. I love all types of ceramic processes, and I try those out a lot in my studio. So, but I can confidently say that I found one that really fits my work and my interests, and it's a really fun technique to workshop too with people. I'll touch on this a bit, which is like, what happened in this pandemic, which is I'm not in any, fine art shows and galleries necessarily. I did have a few shows that I sent work to, but I kind of had to monetize my work, because I was, a stay-at-home potter now, and I'm like, I have a home studio, and so but also learning where my work should be has been something I've been figuring out for the last 3 years. I don't know if I'm quite there yet, but it definitely lives in this in between of like fine arts and craft. I think it's a hard time to be an artist and maker, but I also think it's a rewarding time, and I think that definitely something in my career is that I really never gave up, even when it felt like silly, that like, why was I pursuing this career? But I'm just now starting to like see the benefit and the payoff for that, and so just keep going, keep on keeping on.